And Roughie's football show. I'm Peter Martin. Alan Rough is alongside me. Steven Naismith and Pee Wee Herman joins us on the programme to take all your calls. I mean, honestly, I don't mind anybody getting in the festive spirit, but Tam, that is absolutely magnificent. I mean, that is really embracing Christmas for us.
It is, and I'm the only one that made an effort. I mean, you guys all that clawing, horrible way whenever it was the night of a Scotland game, digging out your awful retro Scotland tops. It's Christmas. Have a bit of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I see you've gone for the aggressive Steven Naismith haircut.
Well, it was rather my wife that went for the aggressive Steven Naismith haircut. I'm still having the coronavirus home haircuts, and that was one of our kind of neater attempts. But you know what? It's fine. Fed up getting up in the morning and it's all long at the back, and you come out the shower and it takes you an hour to dry your hair and all that. You know, I don't know how Roughie can stand it there. Unless, of course, as a lot of folk expect, that's a wig.
Yes.
I've never known anybody else at 83 to have a head of hair like that.
Listen, of course, the other thing I was going to say to you, and it's quite special, Roughie, is the fact that 8 years ago, I mean, I was working with you 9 years ago, but 8 years ago, we started up this PLZ Soccer malarkey on radio and then moved to television, and now we're on the digital platform. It's been a long and crazy time, Roughie, and we're still together.
Yeah, I think the early days were very memorable with the studio that we had. You know, we spent a lot of money in that studio, and I think the carry on that went in that wee box was there for everybody to see.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the longest time, Steven Naismith, you stayed with a club?
5 years. 5 years at Kilmarnock and 5 years at Rangers.
Right, 5. I'm probably in the same boat as you. I thought we'd go 5 together, and then we haven't quite reached, Roughie, the Tam, of course, and Stuart. You've been together 25 years, Tam.
26 now, but 8 years is quite a long time in itself for you and Roughie. In 8 years, that'll probably explain why Roughie is so polished and professional in every single broadcast.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Tam, because I got a message from Alec Michael Brockett who says, it's great, you know, that you're together 8 years, but I feel as if you've been very unkind to Roughie in recent weeks. Now, I don't know about you, Tam, but Roughie and I argue non-stop about things on air. Off air, he's the most laid-back guy you've ever met. But have you, with Cosgrove, had a ding-dong? Do you have ding-dongs now you just forget about it?
No, we've never had an argument. I compare it, and I bet there's a wee bit of this goes on with you and Roughie. I compare it to the married couple who maybe work away. One of them works away at the weekend, one of them works away during the week, and they don't spend other days in each other's pocket, you know. So I basically only see Stuart on a Saturday and a Sunday. As it is now, we've got the Sunday show, and then we go away and we do our own thing through the week, and we very, very rarely hook up, even when the pubs and the restaurants were all open. So I think that's what keeps us from going at each other's throats, you know.
And with that in mind, Roughie, do you think we should maybe not play tennis together then, and that would take the edge off the fact we always seem to argue with each other?
No, because we still argue on the tennis court, you know, so it doesn't make any difference. You know, when you're standing at the front of the net and your partner whacks you in the back of the head with the ball, you know, that's not supposed to happen in tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, 8 years, it's good to still have you alongside me. We've got lots of football to talk about, Europa League as well, government handout, which is
Peter, sorry, who would, I mean, you know, he can't last forever. Who would you replace him with? If you to go for that same kind of model, if you to get down the same kind of road, the big kind of lovable former Scotland international player, if you to try and get somebody else of that ilk, who would be on your short list?
Well, to be fair, I mean, I only have to look maybe a block next to you there. I mean, he's been phoning me saying, look, he can't go on forever. And I've said, look, Naisy, just hang on the now, right? It's only a matter of time, you know. So it's listen. I haven't even contemplated life without Roughie, to be honest with you, Tam. He's just too good to go on. He's the most kindest, most easygoing guy I've ever worked with in my life. Absolutely top drawer. You know, that's the best compliment I can pay him. I will still argue with him, Alec Michael Brockett, because that's the nature of this programme. It's about opinions. And by the way, later on, Roughie, we'll get suggestions coming in right, left and centre for what your daughter should call her horse that you started yesterday. So we'll get on to that as well. Okay, lots to talk about. First of all, pretty sad news, and it's something that maybe Steven Naismith will be able to comment on for the modern day footballer, but one of the guys that I think Roughie knows really well, Tam will know him as well, and certainly from my point of view, I have struck up a good friendship with him when I see him every now and then in Edinburgh. And it's sad news today that Alec Cropley, it's been revealed that he's been diagnosed with dementia. Now, Crops for me is a great player, great for Hibs. He's in the Hibs Hall of Fame. He joined Arsenal, and I can tell you from most people's recollections, he would have been a top Arsenal player had it not been for the fact that he broke his leg early on after signing for them. He looked at, as if he was the real deal for Arsenal. Then he moved to Aston Villa. He won a League Cup with Villa and broke his leg again. And subsequently, he's had 3 broken legs. So
Roughie messed this up again.
yeah, I was just about to say, sorry, you might have lost us just for a 60 seconds or so there. Apologies if you have lost us. I was talking about Alec Cropley, and sadly, he's been diagnosed with dementia. I'm just wondering, Stevie, I was asking the question to you. Do you think it's a generation now that are falling foul of it? Do you think it's something that the modern day footballer would have to contemplate or raise questions about?
It's definitely in the circles of the changing room now. People talking about it. There's a lot more, if you like, chat about it, and obviously kind of seeing firsthand now the consequences of it. Even touching on, I know Chris Sutton's been big on it, and the PFA have kind of been pushing it, but as whether there's enough being done, that's the big thing. So it's definitely something that's a bit more. The challenges of going forward, and this is very tricky, and I think that's probably why in the last 10 years it's not been a subject that people have put to the front of their minds and pushed for, because it's one that is massive, I think. And as well, obviously the rugby boys are now taking the kind of governing body to court as well for it. So it's definitely something that needs to be solved, looked into more, and precautions put in place.
Roughie, you'll know Crops not only as a player, but as a guy that we see regularly if we're speaking in Edinburgh at a couple of venues. Great lad, absolutely gutted to hear this news today.
Yeah, he just the sort of a era just before me. John Blackley era, Sloop, John Blackley, all these lads, big players, very close unit at that time. All the guys through there. So yeah, it's a sore one, But as Nazy says, that we're seeing it day to day now, and it's alarming, when you see some of the people that it's affecting, and you're right, we have to have a look at it. I don't know what we can do about it. Obviously, the rugby boys as well, so it's a tough one, because it's part and parcel of both sports. And as long as if they look at it and they say, look, we can minimise it, then it's worthwhile doing all the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, Tam, how you minimise the risk of it. All I would say is I know, as Nazy said, Chris Sutton has been very vocal and what he thinks should be done, certainly by the PFA and countless other organisations with regards to dementia and the link towards football, heading a ball, contact sports. But I'm not sure what the objective and the end game is, Tam, because, do people get compensation? Because there will come a time when companies realise if we have to pay out to individuals for dementia, then what we'll do is put in place a document which states if you become a professional, you have to sign this document knowing the risks that you're entering into.
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things, Peter, that maybe you could argue a bit like the coronavirus and everything that's going on with the pandemic. I think you've got to leave it to the scientists, you've got to leave it to the experts. And but there's absolutely no harm in football people, if you like, campaigning about it and making their voice heard. Chris Sutton is obviously doing a terrific job of that. But my thoughts, though, with Alec Cropley, a bit like yourself, I don't actually recall, I think, just before my time in terms of him playing, Peter, but I had certainly seen him at a couple of events through in Edinburgh for time to time, so my thoughts go out to him and his family, but it is something that's going to be increasingly examined, I'm sure, Peter, the link between sport, particularly contact sport, and dementia, and you can only hope that strides will be made.
Yeah, absolutely. Thoughts with Alec and his family. An absolutely great lad as a person as well, superb. But when you think of the history of him as well and the player that he was, so many people at Hibs will be looking on at this news with tremendous sadness. Lots of people want to give a mention to as well. Talking about suggestions for your horse, Roughie, which I'll let you in on later on. But Chris Welsh sent me a news article, Roughie, at one particular point in your career, and he sent me a brilliant news article. And the headline, and I kid you not, I'm not winding you up, Roughie. Chris Welsh sent me the headline. It says, Alan Rough for Liverpool. And it just shows you all those, you know what it's like yourself. It annoys the life out of you, but the type of clubs that were after you in the day, and wee Bertie wouldn't let you go.
Yeah, I've had a few run-ins with wee Bertie when he's had a few jars and he's let the cat out the bag. Yeah, but that's just the way it was back then. No agents, no telephone calls. You just relied on the club looking after you, and not just me, but I'm sure there were other players as well. Could have probably moved on, but because the club didn't find it suitable at the right time. But you just have to go on with it, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Had you got that big move, you'd have been down there with your Bugatti in the car park at Liverpool, driving past Nazy in his Ford Fiesta at Everton. It would have been great days, Roughie, to be honest with you. Listen, we've been talking and banging the drum, Stephen, about government handouts, help for Scottish football. Suddenly, they've got it, and it's a welcome handout as well.
It is, especially for the lower leagues that are getting the grants. I think for the higher end stuff, it'll help with cash flow and things like that. But inevitably down the road, they're going to have a bill there that they're going to need to catch up on. So I think in that respect, clubs will. It's not only going to impact them now, it's going to impact them for the coming seasons. On that, I hope that, and for everybody's sake, I hope the government don't feel that by doing this, it then lets them hold back on getting fans back in the grounds, because ultimately that is what's going to get the country's football back to where it should be in terms of full crowds, not only for the clubs financially, but the game as well. So it is definitely welcomed, but it's hopefully it doesn't hold back and is getting back to normal as quick as possible.
30 million. Sure, I must apologise to everyone for the technical difficulties we're having on the programme today. Quite unusual. £30 million is being handed out. 10 million of it, as Stephen said, in grants to the lower league clubs. 20 million loans for clubs in the Premiership, which I would presume, Tam, some might take advantage of at the moment, just to get us to the point where we can see fans in the ground.
Yeah, I'm just wondering as well, Peter, if I don't know how it will be divvied up as such, but if all the clubs necessarily need it. I mean, there is a struggle going on right through Scottish football, of course, until we get the fans back. But you know, I don't know the ins and outs of it. But even when I'm looking at my own club for the money that we were lucky enough to bring in fairly recently for the likes of the Saley David Turnbull, you know, I'm wondering if maybe some of the money was meant for Motherwell. They might be shouting and screaming at Fir Park up the now, saying, what you even talking about? We need every penny we can get right now, Cowan. But, you know, if you looked at it all, it'd be great. I know Scottish football never comes together. We realised all that with the Hearts Partick Thistle scenario, and when they weren't up for league reconstruction, it was all absolutely self-preservation, even though they were trying to make all the right noises. But it would be good if this big sum of money was put in the pot and the clubs were able to get together and say, right, who needs what? Who's really struggling? And even if it was seen as a bit a loan, even for a struggling club, to know if they were wanting a bigger slice of the cake just now, then that would be absolutely fine. But just got to try and preserve the clubs as best we can until hopefully the fans are back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, I think Jim Goodwin actually echoes your point. It's the Mirren boss saying some clubs will need it more than others.
Yeah, look, it's brilliant that the government are willing to make that money available to all the clubs out there. You know, I think there are some clubs that will probably need it more than others, and you know, it would need to be distributed in that manner.
Yeah, we'll wait to see who takes up the money and the biggest amount that they can possibly get. Only time will tell on that. Tam, I've got to ask you this question because it's something that's been in the news today, and Dave Cormack has been really pushing the button on the government, trying to get them to allow fans to go in to Pittodrie. He's very, very angry, and in fact, he's had a pop at Jason Leach, basically saying he's been off the ball more than concentrating on maybe communicating with Scottish football. So is he being unkind to Jason?
Yeah, well, I think it's shocking, of course, that Jason Leach goes on a thankfully very popular radio show that crosses a great wide demographic and allows members of the Scottish community to ask questions to our national clinical director. You know, I mean, that's absolutely disgraceful behaviour from Jason Leach. How dare he do anything like that, you know? But the bottom line, Peter, that we need to remember is that, you know, Jason Leach, his role here, it's all about health. And Dave Cormack, hugely successful businessman, who now spends his time across the pond. I would argue that unlike health with Jason Leach, it's all about wealth with Dave Cormack, you know, and we can't keep saying that, oh, England have done this, England have done that. We are two separate countries. We've got our own rules and regulations up here in Scotland, and they've got other rules and regulations down in England. So I don't think you can keep comparing the two. And if Mr. Doncaster thinks that you can compare the two, then I would tell him right here, right now, something I've campaigned about for a few years now. They brought back a European place for the winners of the League Cup in England. So if Mr. Doncaster is wanting parity with England, can I suggest that we also bring back the League Cup European spot up in Scotland? Very easy peasy.
Yeah, I don't quite know where Dave is coming from on this, because picking up on Tam's point, Roughie, Jason Leach highlights what the medical advice is and what the tier situation is and what people are allowed to do. The area that Dave Cormack is making his application to is at a government level, and the government make that call. So really, I think his bag should be go and try and speak to Nicola Sturgeon. Go and try and speak to, any government minister in Scotland, MSP, that determines what happens in this country.
Yeah,
the thing is, as well. Sorry to butt in, Roughie, but
I listened to Tam's show, and that's his problem, that they haven't contacted him. If I'm right, Tam. No, when I listened to Tam's show, one of his problems was that he had no response from whoever you're supposed to get a response to for getting fans in. I think that was his biggest problem.
Right, well, I don't know about what happens in the private emails between any chairman in Scottish football and our clinical director, or indeed our First Minister. But what I would say as well is we keep forgetting, Peter, that football, Scottish football, was already granted special privileges just by allowing it to come back, so that we could honour the contract with Sky, so that the money could be filtered through to the Scottish clubs that desperately needed it. It's not as if they're wanting to give Scottish football a kicking, or they're no wanting fans back. I reckon they're only trying to do it safely and wait until there's a better opportunity for getting fans back. I get accused as well, and our show gets accused on a Saturday and a Sunday of, Jason Leach is your pal, you're going to say that. I've only met the man once. I met him way back in March when he was able to come into the studio before all the regulations kicked in and all the protocols. So I can't claim that he's my best buddy and we go out for a curry every week. That's patent nonsense. I would love fans to come back as well, but I only want it to happen when they're in big numbers and when, more importantly, it is safe. And the very notion that Jason Leach or Nicola Sturgeon or whoever it may be has got it in for Scottish football, that is just absolute nonsense. And I'd maybe ask as well, to Mr. Doncaster, correct me if I'm wrong here, Peter, Mr. Doncaster, I think, should allow the experts to take care of what is a pandemic. And maybe Mr. Doncaster should try to take care of Scottish football. Unless I'm very much mistaken, the SPFL still doesn't have a sponsor. And we're halfway through the season. Maybe Mr. Doncaster should concentrate on stuff like that and let the experts, the scientists, run the country that's under a pandemic.
I think the other, and I always try and offer a bit of balance here on why a certain decision is being made, Stephen. And I think the overriding thought in my head with regards to government decisions on not allowing the fans into stadia up and down the country is quite simply, yes, the medical advice, yes, to take it as a collective to deal with the pandemic in the first place. But secondary to that, you cannot have a situation where one individual sport suddenly has a unique situation where they are treated differently from other sports, because the minute you say to people, right, you can get into football, everybody else will be chapping down their door saying, well, wait a minute, what about our sport? What about our business? What about us being allowed to bring people in? And suddenly you've got a clamour of people saying, listen, change your policy. We want the same as football.
Yeah, I think it needs to all come under the one umbrella of sport, if you like. And that's where I think people's argument comes from, seeing other parts of the country whether it be shops, whether it be indoor activities or whatever, these things are opening up to an extent. And football fans' argument is that, well, you're still outside, you're in a stand that's got a capacity of 10,000. How can you not have a couple of thousand at least, if you like, in that? That is their argument. But like you said, there's underneath that basic argument, there is a lot more to it. Every sport has got to get it. The logistics of getting in and out. All these things are, like Tam said, I am sure that the government are working with football and every other sport to understand all the logistics, but on top of that, how it's all done in a safe environment.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I would say, just to offer a note of balance on this, and again, I'm not defending him or indeed Neil Doncaster's lawyer on this situation, but I don't envy him the fact of trying to actually find a sponsor over the last 12 months, and for two reasons. One of them is a criticism, one of them is an observation. The observation is, in this financial downturn, major sponsors at the level that they're looking at will be difficult to find. The second part of that is, who the hell would want to sponsor Scottish football on the evidence of the way they've conducted themselves in the past 9 months? That's my criticism, Tam. The observation is, it's difficult to get good sponsors.
Yeah, and the only observation I'll make, if Dave Cormack is determined that he wants crowds of 2,000 at Pittodrie, maybe he should bring back Mark McGee. I think he was heading that way.
By the way, I'll tell you right now, McGee is on this show, and he'll be waiting for you at one point. Anyway, let's.
Peter, just see on the sponsor.
Yeah.
See, for me, it needs to be more proactive. Your sponsor for these coming years needs to be pushed for, be organised before you actually need it, and it doesn't seem to be like that in the last few years, I don't think.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I could say a lot more on the whole sponsorship issue with the SPFL, but I'm not going to go down the road, because quite simply, at the end of the day, I agree with you on the fact that they need to be more proactive. But I think the biggest problem is the fact that they are trying to sell a product which the image is tarnished. The perception of it at the moment is lots of little individuals fighting in a playground, and I don't think it has the polished marketing that it should have. That's all I would say to you, because what Scottish football needs is a complete rethink on how to package it and market it and how to actually sell it to sponsors. And right now, in the last year, and possibly before that, when they still couldn't get sponsors, I think they've made big mistakes. They need to be able to make it appealing to everyone to want to watch it. They need to make individual players suddenly get on board with promoting it. And I think they've failed miserably at that, because so many people have got their own interests at heart. So many people sell the product, but you never know really what you're getting when you try and buy the product. So there is clearly a break and a discord between what you're selling, what you're getting, and the perception of that as well. There are so many different areas in it that I think people are just saying, why the hell would I want to be involved in this? And I think it needs a rethink. It certainly needs somebody to go and change the image of it. And I don't mean a Barry Hearn, but I mean somebody of that kind of skill set. Maybe not as brash, but certainly somebody that can change people's mindset, because there are too many people with too much power who basically divide everybody within the SPFL. Anyway, you might agree, you might disagree. You can give us your thoughts on that. I know we've had a little bit of trouble getting some of the messages through on Facebook, but we're on Facebook. You can like, share and follow us. We're on YouTube as well. You can subscribe, and we're on Twitter live as well. Tam Cowan, Steven Naismith and Alan Rough. It's Europa League. It's Lech Poznan Rangers, and it's Celtic against Lille tonight.
Rangers manager Steven Gerrard has said nothing changes despite his side's stunning start to the season, as the unbeaten Gers head to Poland to face Lech Poznan, knowing a win sees them top their Europa League group. With the place in the last 32 secured for the second year in a row, it would be possible to take their eye off the ball. There will be changes, with Bugani Zungu one of a few players coming into the starting 11, but winning is still paramount for Gerrard.
There's no one in the group that is coming here with the attitude or the mentality, or we're already qualified and this is just another game. People are desperate to play. The way they trained this morning, everyone's really pushing for places in the team. It's great to see. The atmosphere is fantastic, and I'm sure they're going to want to protect the unbeaten run.
Poznan are already out and have said they will also rest players for league duty. They've won just 2 of their last 6, although they are tough to beat at home. Last time out, it was a 1-0 win for the Gers, thanks to an Alfredo Morelos goal. A repeat of that tonight would complete their task and give the Ibrox side their highest ever points total in the European group. It's more a matter of pride for Celtic, who welcome table-topping Lille to Parkhead, having already been eliminated. The Hoops have won just 2 in their last 12 and have a solitary point in this campaign, although it was earned against Lille, as Moy El Yunusi grabbed a brace in a 2-2 draw. Neil Lennon has been backed by his board again, but needs to turn things around quickly if anything is to be salvaged from the season, and I hope that starts tonight.
I've no question, I've no doubt they will put a run together, but we got to put those words into actions and work hard, every day. I think they're working too hard in terms of they're trying too hard to make things happen, whereas it's just not that natural flow at the minute, and they just need to find their natural flow again.
Olivier Cham, Nia Beaton and Hatem El Hamed are doubts, whilst Ismail Asoro, Patrick Klamala and David Turnbull are all likely to start. Lille remain unbeaten in this competition, have lost just once in 18 games, so a much changed Hoops side will find it tough, but an unlikely victory here could be the spark they so badly need.
Yeah, that's how it is shaping up. I think, Stephen, there's no doubt in my mind that Rangers will want to try and win that group. There's the small matter of £900,000 if you can top the group as well, which is not to be sniffed at.
Yeah, I think the amount of work they've put into the group alone, they'll want the rewards of that by finishing top. Yes, for the club financially, it's great and stuff, but I don't think that will come into the manager's thoughts too much. I think there will be a few changes, but this whole season, you could argue that Rangers don't have a first 11, and then obviously they've got the players to come in. I think there's maybe between 14 and 15 players who would all see themselves as first team regulars. So even when the manager does make a few changes, it's still a strong team. So I think he will have one eye on the weekend just to continue that league form. But knowing the manager, the way he spoke, the way he's in the previous weeks kept pushing forward, he will want to win the game to have a chance to come top of the group.
I fancy them to win 2-1, Stephen. What about you?
I think it'll be a draw. I think they've got the tougher game than Benfica. I think Benfica will win comfortably, and I think Rangers will draw.
Tam?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, just seeing Neil Lennon there, I would have been astonished. I know a lot of folk are astonished that Neil Lennon wasn't sacked or that he didn't resign after the St Johnstone result, the one each coming in the back of the Ross County defeat. But Peter, I give you the scenario if Celtic had jotted Neil Lennon and brought in a new manager, and then Celtic had gone on and beaten Hearts in the Scottish Cup final. And I know, for example, in the papers today, Ian Black says that he fancies Hearts for that one, but he says he wouldn't put any money on it. But if Celtic go into that Scottish Cup final and beat Hearts, a quadruple treble, can you imagine then the guy that becomes synonymous in terms of the TV coverage, in terms of the DVDs, in terms of the photographs in the newspapers? Can you imagine Celtic had a new manager who's been in the door 2 weeks? Who, if you like, takes all that glory. It was unthinkable. So I'm kicking myself that I didn't actually get a bet on for Neil Lennon to remain as manager, because I couldn't believe for a second they would have chipped him out. I think, no, for the fans that are wanting him to go, it's maybe falling in their favour as well, Peter, because when you do look at the runny fixtures that Celtic have got coming up, the so-called easier games, when you look at their domestic fixtures, you would imagine that Neil Lennon could get a wee bit of run of form out of the players. But for the guys that want him out of the club, then they're looking and thinking they are potential banana skins there, in much the same way Ross County and St Johnstone did the Bizzo with a win and a draw in consecutive weeks. So, I'm not quite sure how I see it. I couldn't be any less interested in the Celtic Lille game tonight. That is your classic dead rubber. I only look at these games for the Scottish perspective. I don't even know what Lille have to do in the group, if anything, and I could not care less. So I'll not be watching that tonight. And the Rangers game is obviously, you've got a wee bit of minor interest in terms of can they win the group and maybe get a so-called easier tie in the knockout stages. But even then, I think the group's done and dusted. So I think it might be Home Alone on film 4 tonight.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, Stephen, I know you and I have been discussing it, and we love our football and we're quite serious about it. Last week, Roughie didn't watch some of the Champions League and admitted to us that he was watching Bake Off. This week, Tam doesn't give two flying about the both games. I think it's time, Stevie, that we seriously looked at two new pundits and just bulleted these two right out the door, because Pee Wee Herman and the Horse of the Year show here, they don't care about football, Stephen. You and I are the only ones that care about this game.
Never thought I would. I could never see myself not watching a game of football when it's on the TV. Unbelievable. But like Tam said at the start, I said,
I was only watching it because it was a boy from Scotland that won it. That was the only way. I just was supporting a boy from my own country, and I'd want to see if he won it. But it's Tam sort of dodged the Rangers game there a wee bit. We'll come to the Celtic game in a minute, Tam.
Yeah, I know. But what you've got to realise, Roughie, is this. This is the joy of. This is the absolute joy of having the big man on. It is quite simply this. Tam, for 25 years, usually the way he plays it on his radio show is he directs the pace of it. So he goes from right to left, scurries about, and then every now and then, if he crosses the line and goes to the edge of the cliff, Stuart drags him back in. But when he's on here, it's a different game, because I'm guiding the ship, and he goes off at tangents, still thinking he's got his BBC head on, and me, Ruffy's no happy about it there. He's raging.
Well, I just like to bring up the...
Knocked him off his stride.
Let's talk about the Celtic Kilmarnock game on Saturday. No,
let's not. At the end of the day, listen, here's the Rangers team that Tam doesn't care about. McLaughlin, Patterson, Balogun, Goldson, Barisic, Zungu starts, Kamara, Aribo's in there, Arfield, Hadji and Itten. And quite clearly, Stephen, you can see by that side that he's giving a few fringe players the chance to impress.
Yeah, and that's where the league stuff becomes more important than tonight's game. As much as, yes, they can top the group, when they go through, they will have a tough fixture anyway. So I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the old trying to juggle in 4 different fronts in terms of the cups and the European and the league. So it gives these guys an opportunity, but he's done that also in the other cup games. So I think the one thing the manager's been good at is when there has been changes, he's kept that motivation there. The players who are more senior don't feel as if it's a weakened team. That level of aggression, determination and the will to win has stayed consistent in every team selection, which has been the key.
And in contrast to that, Celtic, that's not been the key. There's going to be changes. Beaton and El Hamid and Cham don't look as if they're going to make it to start that game. Soro, Turnbull, Klimala, they'll all get the chance to impress. The manager has said that he's hoping at some point it will turn. It's 2 wins in 12. One of the former players, Timothy Weah, has been commenting, saying he reckons sooner or later, Neil Lennon will get it right.
The coaching staff was amazing to me as a person, as a player. You know, they took the time to work with me. The bond that we had as a team, and, you know, between the players and the coaching staff was amazing. Neil was great to me when I was there. Obviously, I left the club in a bit of a rush because of the World Cup, and, you know, things happen. But overall, he was a great coach, a great guy in the locker room, and we loved him.
Yeah, nice words there, Roughie, but it doesn't cut any ice with the Celtic fans, because suddenly we have this ongoing situation where quite simply the fans are going to protest, and they've organised a protest, and as you can see, suddenly the PR on this isn't going well, because quite simply I'm looking at higher fences going up, getting ready for Celtic fans protesting. So they're clearly not happy that they're going to be coming in staging the protest.
No, I think the protesters aren't going to go away, but I think we've all been in the game long enough to know that the only way to sort that out is to win games, and I'm sure Neil Lennon and the players know that. If you're winning games and you're on a wee run, these sort of protests don't look as bad, but you've got to start winning games. Tonight's game is a very difficult game. I think this team are sitting first or second in the French league. They're on a remarkable run. And it's not the night that you want 5 or 6 players out for whatever reason. So you'll be hoping the boys that come in, can put in some kind of performance, because it just can't continue. There needs to be some positive messages on the footballing side coming out rather than all the negative stuff.
I wouldn't even bother, Tam, predicting the game, because I've watched Celtic 90% of their games this season, and it just follows a similar path. The other team knows when to pick their moment and pick them off.
Yeah, it would seem in this group all we really know about tonight, Peter, is that Lille will score 4 goals. So to get a win, we know that Celtic need to score 5. So that might be a big ask. But this whole thing smacks, just when I'm listening to you there, Peter, of old firm bias yet again in Scottish football. Guys that support Diddy teams like myself, we all knew that when a big crowd was able to return to a stadium in Scotland, it was going to probably be either Celtic or Rangers. And what do you know? It's been Celtic. I think that's been 3 times now in recent weeks. A big crowd right back there at Parkhead. Typical old firm bias, as I say. Shocking.
Yeah, and no social distancing when that big crowd is outside protesting. No. Although I would say this, the Celtic Trust is organising this protest on Sunday, and they are trying to do it clearly, all above board. This is their statement for what's going to happen on Sunday at 1 o'clock. There is understandable anger among Celtic supporters, which has led to a couple of spontaneous protests. While these were responsible and orderly, there is potential for anger to spill over and our fans become vulnerable to arrest. The Celtic Trust, in recognising these protests, are very likely to continue. I've decided to call for a COVID-compliant, organised protest to convey the concerns of the fans to the club. Perhaps there will be those who think we should keep quiet and say nothing given the sensitivities around the footballing issues and health issues. However, we take the view that fan organisations should show leadership in these situations. We have liaised with the club and with the police, and we're now calling on those fans who wish to protest to come to the Celtic Way on Sunday, 13th of December at 1 o'clock and at no other time. Okay, organised. I'm not quite sure who has dismissed their right to protest. I don't think anyone would, providing you are following rules, providing you're not throwing fences at police, providing you are not putting up banners which suggest shooting the board and other disgusting banners that have gone up. Absolutely. If you're not happy with the manager and you want to say it's time is up, yeah, put it across in such a way that is not abusive. And then I think you'll get a voice. And I think the Trust are trying to do that with all, decently behaved Celtic supporters. The only thing I would say, Roughie, is the manager has to carry the can. There's a number of reasons for why he's at this point, whether it be poor signings, whether it be players that haven't really stepped up to the plate, they might have thrown him under a bus or whatever. In my view, the people who are calling for the board to be sacked need to take a step back and take a long, hard look at themselves. This is a board that's delivered 9 in a row. This is a board that's spent money. If they're open to criticism, it may be at times on when they've spent the money in particular signings. They've made mistakes. and they have to carry the can for making mistakes. But because they lose one league title potentially at the end of this season, they want them sacked. It's preposterous.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with the whole thing. The people who are protesting aren't looking into the things that you've just said there. It's just a massive reaction of disappointment and 10 in a row. They're not looking at all the other things that go with it. And I don't have a problem with the protesting as well. What I would say is if any fans were going to protest, they should protest at the end of the game rather than before the game. Because protesting at before the game is doing the players no help whatsoever. They're doing the manager nothing, no help at all, and it's totally against everything that the club are trying to do is get them back on winning ways. So if you're going to protest at 5 o'clock after the game. Don't be vocal before it because you're just setting everybody back.
Just Jordan on YouTube has said a board that has a CEO that's been there for 17 years is too long. Well, that's another issue. Is he failing in his job? Has he got too much power, too much control? These are all other issues. You're talking about the issue of 9 years, Stephen, of a board that has spent money, delivered to the managers, and delivered the titles.
Yeah, but I think their argument, a couple of the arguments of it are when they've spent the money. I think they've went into a few seasons and the club's been that far ahead domestically. They've thought we're going to have a right good go in European competitions. They've not then get through the qualifiers, and a lot of fans have put that down to not having their signings done early effectively. In terms of saying yes, they've delivered 9 for a good 4 or 5 of their years. There was not much competition. So does that carry the weight of previous 9 in a row teams? I don't think it does, and I think Celtic fans are realistic in that. So I think, and then you've got to this point now where in that you've got the biggest season in the club's recent history in terms of getting 10 in a row, and the fans think that the board, the manager, have took their eye off the ball. Simple as that.
Yeah, but on those issues that you mentioned there, and I think this is the biggest point here, on those issues that you mentioned, there is a balancing act by saying sack the board. It's one of the best run clubs in Great Britain, Tam. This is a club that's financially stable. You may like or dislike their methods if you're a Celtic fan on the way they go about that. I agree with Stephen. I think they've also, if they were open to criticism, they are open to criticism on, I think they've let go minimum £60 million from missing out in qualification for certain Champions League group stages when it beggars belief that they actually lost the games, but it was because of their mismanagement and their attitude to buying players at the right time. But it's criticism that's worthy, but is it worthy enough to say sack the board as well because they're not winning 10 in a row?
No, because I don't think the board would have got a mention. In fact, they may have been applauded, they may have been lauded by the fans if it hadn't been for recent events, i.e. Rangers scushing clear at the top of the league, Celtic being put out of Europe while their greatest rivals are basically playing a friendly the night they're coasting into the next round. It's the big Celtic Rangers divide that absolutely exaggerates anything and everything that is happening at the other club. Because on the face of it, again, a Motherwell fan who's only seen my team winning one major trophy, I'm utterly bemused at the idea of fans protesting 10 days before a quadruple treble, a potential quadruple treble, all due respect to Hearts. But by the same token, Peter, and the Celtic Trust, good on them. If they're organising a peaceful, COVID-compliant protest, then that's absolutely fine, because I must be honest, I think if I was a Celtic fan, and I'm looking back to 2012, the implosion at Rangers, and then you're expecting Celtic just to go miles and miles and miles over the horizon and leave Rangers in their wake. Where they find themselves now, when you look at that league table, when you look at what is happening in Europe, then astonishing. I don't think a book in the land would have given you a price about the current scenario that we've got in Scottish football. So I can see it for both ways, but just again, as a fan of a wee diddy club, the very idea of protesting outside your stadium a matter of days before a quadruple treble. It's just utterly laughable.
I think Tam makes a great point there, Roughie, which is probably the biggest complaint that I think a number of Celtic fans will have on this. And it's the point Tam's highlighted there, which is quite simply from 2012 and the chance to financially put themselves so far out of sight of Rangers. In that 8 to 9 year period of dominance, they've watched them and been complacent to the point where Rangers are able to surpass them if they win the league this year. And I think that's probably the greatest criticism that will come their way. In my mind, I don't think the board can be... I don't think you look at Dermot Desmond to cut the reins on Celtic, because I think that's a foolish ambition for some of the Celtic fans. But the one thing I would say about this, if they lose this title, the legacy of Peter Lawwell and the legacy of any of the managers, Neil Lennon, if he's still in place, is quite simply the Celtic fans will not forget the people who cost them the 10.
No, I quite rightly believe that, because they put the 10 up there above everything. And that's the way supporters are. But to get back to they had the chance, to get further and further away for Rangers from a financial point of view. Why would you want to do that when you don't have to? With Rangers in such a mess for the last 7 years, why would you go out and spend a lot of money when you know that the players that you've got are good enough to stay there? I mean, that's why they've got so much money in the bank. That my criticism would be they've taken their eye off the ball in European football. They've not bought the quality that got them into Champions League group stages. But for the 7 years, if I was on a board, I'd be going, like, Rangers are 20 points behind us. Why are we going out and spending money? And that's year on year. But as you have to be aware of Rangers catching up and getting themselves organised, that's when you have to say to yourself, hey, look, this is where we are, this is where we are. This is when you need to spend the money. So I thought the calibre of player this year, in the light of how well Steven Gerrard has done at Rangers, should have pushed the boat out. This year should have been the spending money year, not bringing players in and loan. It should have been long term, and that's a problem for this year anyway.
Yeah, okay. From the Europa League in Celtic and Rangers, I must admit, I'll be amazed if Celtic got a draw tonight. I can see them lose again. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I think they'll lose. I think it's a game the manager can do without, or everybody associated with the club can do without. They've got to play it, but I think it'll be a much changed team, and they will inevitably get beat.
Yep. Okay.
Peter? What's the situation with Lille? Are they still on the hunt?
They can top the group.
Right. That's the element for them, Tam, that basically I think will mean they'll go out there and win it. That's what's influencing me to say I think they've got more to play for. Celtic are playing for pride, and I don't see anything that sparks a revival in my mind. Roughie, are you about to tell me differently?
No, I just think with home advantage that they've shown that they can score goals against this team. I think if they got a draw, it'd be something that you could build on. But I know that Tam's talking about 4 here, 4 there. Can't afford to keep losing 4 goals. So it needs to be an organised performance tonight. And I'll go for a 1 each draw. Yeah,
okay. Optimistic. Tam, I know you couldn't give 2 hoots about it, but...
particularly when you showed me that league table, no interest at all. But I think I feel a wee bit for Neil Lennon, and he couldn't take another doing. Even just in terms of a result that builds a bit of confidence. I've got a wee feeling that Celtic are actually going to win this tonight. They're going to sneak it 1-0.
Okay, and I'm glad you said that with the outfit that you're wearing, because then I can treat that suggestion with the disdain it deserves. Listen, on that basis, one other little thing that I think is gathering pace here. Last night I watched Michelin against Liverpool. Again, VAR taking prominence in the match, and there was a long wait at one point for a decision to be made. Jurgen Klopp has now mentioned that he is growing less and less fond of it.
took just too long. I think now in the end, I didn't see it back, obviously, and then all decisions were right, and either way they were so difficult to make. I don't know, because they all took like 3-4 minutes in the cold for the boys in shorts, stuff like this. It's really hard. I can hear already people saying, oh my God, now he's talking about that. But it took really long, and it was really cold. So that doesn't help. But in the end, I used to be one of the people who said, yes, VR is a good idea. I'm really not sure if I would say that again, to be honest. But now we have it, and now we have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, quite simply, Steven Naismith, I think it's here to stay. Whether it takes 1, 2 or 10 years, as some have suggested, to tweak it, I'm glad we don't have it at the moment, because all the teething problems, I'm glad they are elsewhere. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think bigger picture, we should have it. I think exactly what you say, the tweaking of it, it should have been rolled out in a reserve league for 3-4 years to get rid of all these teething problems. Because the game last night, the last 10 minutes of the game, there was a good 3 incidences that the game gets stopped for about 2 minutes. It was ridiculous. And that is where the problem lies. I think if you're ultimately getting the right decision, then that is a good thing. The time it takes and setting the boundaries as clear as possible. Everybody's saying about offside, oh, it's never offside. Well, the letter of the law, if his heel is a millimetre offside, he's offside. Is that what we want for the game? Or should it be a bit of daylight between the players? These are things that need ironed out to speeding the process up, and I think it can be good for the game.
Yeah, I like your suggestion of daylight between the players. I think that's got to be the way ahead, because this arm offside, toe offside is doing my head in. Mm-hmm. And another thing, Tam, it's too long. The game that we loved, the free-flowing game that we loved, if you can't call it in the first 4 angles, which would take you 20 seconds, no, you got to let the referee be the referee.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Peter, but I almost thought Jurgen Klopp was at it there. I was assuming he was kidding on. Guys like him and every other manager, it seems, in English football for years have been droning on and on and on about VAR and how if we have the technology, we must use it. And then it just seems that, lo and behold, and there's been so many cases now, when a particular instant goes against a club, that manager is out shouting for the rooftops about how rotten VAR is. I think it is here to stay now. They can clearly afford it in English football, notwithstanding the coronavirus issues, of course. But yeah, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. But I agree, Peter, that when the minute you've got the VAR guys hooked up to the referee, the decisions need to be a wee bit more like that, or it is going to end up, as everybody always says, bit of a cliche now, like American football, stop, start. So we need to rid that element of it, but there's no way they're going to get rid of that system now.
Yeah, no, it's here to stay, Roughie, but I think the tweaks need to come in before we start embracing it.
Yeah, I think there'll be a clamour at the end of the season, particularly for the big English. The powerful clubs will have something to say about it. They're not happy about it, and I think something will be done. More important for me is the handball one. I think the handball one's worse. That definitely needs to have a look at, because it's getting ridiculous. If I was a defender, I wouldn't know where to put my hands, during a game. So 2 things need to be cleared up. The VAR's here to say, let's just see if they can tidy it up a bit. I thought it was goal line clearances and, penalty box instances, that people diving or not touching or anything like that. But it's just got out of hand now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is our headline for tonight's show, Tam. Roughie doesn't know where to put his hands. I mean, it's incredible. I never thought we'd see that on the show. Honestly, there was a telepathy there, Tom. The minute the line was delivered, I could see the two of us going, There you are. Still, that's the Lanarkshire boys for you. Anyway, apart from anything else, before we go, I think it's only right and proper, and it's linked into Roughie as well. This morning when I was driving in the car, sometimes the little message pops up on your phone and it's propped up in the car phone holder, and it was probably with a little bit of sadness because this man actually broke my heart in 1982. When he scored a hat-trick that knocked out what I believe to be in the best Brazilian side never to win a World Cup. When he scored the hat-trick for Italy against Brazil, Paolo Rossi was given free shoes for the rest of his life, apparently from an Italian shoemaker. But sadly today, the news, gone too soon, Paolo Rossi passed away.
World football is mourning the death of one of the greatest ever Italian players, Paolo Rossi, who has passed away at the age of 64. Rossi's breakthrough came at the age of 20 with Vicenza, where his performance earned him a place at the 1978 World Cup with the national team. He scored 3 goals and was named the competition's second best player. It was not all plain sailing early on, as Rossi was involved in a betting scandal in 1980, leading to a 2-year ban from the sport, although he always maintained his innocence. He began his redemption as a world record move to Juventus saw him start in their trophy-laden side alongside Michel Platini and Zbigniew Boniek, picking up 2 Serie A titles and a European Cup along the way. Rossi then led Italy to the 1982 World Cup, scoring 6 times to be named the tournament's top scorer and best player, becoming only the 3rd man to win all 3 main awards in one tournament. His hat-trick to knock out favourites Brazil in the quarter-finals will go down as one of the greatest ever individual performances, never mind his brace in the semi against Poland or the opener in the final against West Germany. That year he won the Ballon d'Or, and to this day no Italian player has scored more at a World Cup. Rest in peace, Paolo Rossi.
What a player, Roughie. I thought he was magnificent.
Yeah, I think everybody remembers the celebrations. I think every time he scored that goal, we all love seeing centre forwards scoring goals, but when you score a goal like him and you celebrate the way they did, I mean, I always think of Kenny Dalglish as well, the smiling he had in his face every time he scored, but that celebration he had every time he scored against Brazil was absolutely fantastic.
I don't know about you, Stephen, but when you grow up as a boy and you're collecting your sticker album, the 1982 Brazil side were just unbelievable. And at that quarter-final, the guys like Socrates, Falcao, a junior who was a fantastic player, Zico, they had an unbelievable team. And Paolo Rossi scored a hat-trick. And I think everybody was absolutely stunned that they were knocked out. They were just sensational. But Italy, destiny was there for them. They would go on to win the World Cup.
Yep, and I think they're the moments that if you don't know too much about the Italian football, that's what brings you that knowledge. As you grow up, you've got the leagues that you follow, but then there's these players around the world that do special things that stick in your mind as you grow up, and he's a guy that's certainly done that in that tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it something that sticks in your mind, Tam? Do you remember him? Do you remember that name? Do you remember that game?
Absolutely. 13 years old I was, Peter, so you're not that long into the high school and you're getting a real passion for the football. And 2 things on Paolo Rossi. Just think, as you say, Peter, that Brazil team that he did put 3 against. First up, has any other player ever scored a hat-trick against Brazil? I would love to know the answer to that in the history of world football. What an achievement that is in itself. And the reason we know that Brazil team were something magical, when we think of the Brazil-Scotland game, of course, that Roughie played in that same tournament, we'd first and foremost think of the Dave Neary, the so-called toe poke, as it was dubbed by Jimmy Hill. But then when you just think about everybody saying at the time, and since then, that was the worst thing Dave Neary in Scotland could have done because it angered the Brazilians, and that's why they came at us. When you remember what they were like for the rest of that game, they were an absolute joy to watch. It was poetry in motion. It was that team that this man, Paolo Rossi, the great Paolo Rossi, managed to score 3 against in the one game. What an incredible achievement.
Yep, and certainly gone too soon, Paolo Rossi. Just before we go, Roughie, lots of people are suggesting names for your horse along the way. Memories, because I know you love your horse. And Jim Ross, who is a big jambo, who watches the show regularly from Edinburgh, says, why don't you call the horse Jags or legend? Have you got any early names that you're going to call the horse?
Well, as you know, it's not my horse, it's my daughter's horse. So the horse will be called Lomond. And it's called Lomond because that's where she got married, at Loch Lomond.
Right, okay, well, a big apology to all the viewers, the thousands and thousands who have sent in the names for the horse then. It's Lomond and that's it, so there's no influence there. There goes the car we were offering for that competition, so we'll come up with something else for next week for Christmas. Listen, it's hard to believe. I don't want to be rotten to him, Tam, because somebody feels as if I'm being unkind to him because I disagree with him on the show. I mean, for God's sake, Tam, is this the snowflake generation? You can't have a good argument. I mean, I don't know how Steven Naismith survives. He argues with everybody.
Roughie never called his autobiography the thing that I've got in mind. He doesn't even tell this particular story when he's on the after dinner circuit, which I think is ridiculous. I think he should have named the horse after the very last words that the late great Jock Stein said to him. He just called it your own, you fat bee. That'd been a great name for a horse. And if it ever made the racing, of course, you can go up to 18 letters. A wee bit of trivia that any horse racing fan knows. You're allowed to name any horse as many as 18 letters if it's going to be racing. Wow. So that would fit in fine. Your own, you fat bee. And coming up to the first, and it's your own, you fat bee. That'd be a great name.
It would be absolutely magnificent. Anyway, apart from anything else, Stephen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but everyone has the choice because the new Maestro training tops are coming out. We're about to put them on the website. It's a little bit of a homage to Bill Shankly. We've got the red one, which kicked it off in my mind. I was so desperate to get them made. We've got a black, we've got the green, we've got the blue, and we've got the red one. I just want to know what your choice is going to be. I don't have a claret and amber one. I must apologise, Tam. Stephen,
are we getting one? Are we getting one for our Christmas from you? Is this our Christmas present?
This is your Christmas present, Tam. Roughie's picked red for Partick Thistle. Charlie Adams picked blue. No surprise there. Stevie, what are you going to go for?
I'll go with Big Charlie. I'll go for blue.
You're going to go for blue? Absolutely. Well, you got to give him it. Is it a medium? Is it a medium?
No,
still trying to soak in with him. Still trying to soak in with him after walking away.
Just to fit into the room. I think it's the room I'm in. You know what I mean? I'll blend in with the room.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm terribly colourblind, Peter, but it doesn't bother. But is that the black one you've got on the now then? Yeah.
Yeah,
my screen's not the best today. I think that's a topper. Yeah. I would if I could have one of those, and then I'll make all your wee Christmas dreams come true, Peter.
Told me there was only green ones left.
Say that, Roughie. Don't start annoying people now. So a royal blue one for Maisie, a black one for Tam, and Roughie, you're going for the red, and Charlie's going for royal blue. We'll find out of the rest of the crew anyway. I can't wait till we all are able to get back together for our late Christmas party, whenever that will be, Tam. But anyway, I think it's great that you've obviously dressed for the occasion. Still a lot to come on the programme. Tomorrow we'll have reaction to the Europa League, but thanks to Tam, thanks to Nazy, thanks to Roughie as well. And let's not forget, as we say goodbye, there's always still time to get yourself a wee Christmas present for someone you love.
It's the perfect Christmas gift for your dad, mum, your brother, your sister, your best friend. The Legends limited edition series by sports artist Jim Scullion is available to order now. From t-shirt to canvas to prints, select your favourite legend of football. From Larson to Laudrup, Pele to Maradona, Messi or Ronaldo. Order your perfect stocking filler now by clicking on the link to own your very own limited edition legend.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.